Welcome to the American Small Business League podcast. I am Bruce the Taurus, and with me is Anna Lee Williams, running for Congress in the 11th District of the great state of New Jersey. And it's an honor to meet you and to talk to you today, Anna. How are you?
Thank you so much, Bruce. I'm so excited to be here. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm really well. And as you know, we want to talk about you and why you're running, what you'd like to accomplish, and then talk about the small business issues that are near and dear to my organization, the American Small Business League. So, where would you start? A little bit about you. What would you tell people meeting you for the first time?
I'm running for Congress in New Jersey 11. I'm running on a platform of you deserve a fair deal, right? So you work hard, you show up for your family and your community, you pay your taxes, you've done everything right, and at the end of the day, you deserve representatives that are fighting for you. Everyday normal people. A lot of us have the same concerns and worries, right? We're thinking about our future, our kids, I mean, the world, right? Like we have a lot of the same stressors, and ultimately we deserve representatives that are listening to that and putting forward policies that help us move forward and help us grow together, right? As a society, we need to just keep moving.
Yes, and you've got a nice list of really heartfelt, I'm going to say, issues. Your fair deal, get what you put into the system. The first three are healthcare, housing, and education. Do you want to? I assume that's the order in which you would like anyone to, think about. So why don't you share a little bit about those things, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the reason for those being our top three is because we asked people in New Jersey, what are the things on your mind? I can start with healthcare. There's pretty much no one I know who isn't frustrated with their health insurance right now or, has had some sort of bad experience. And the truth is that we all pay into our health insurance, right? And at the end of the day, I expect my health insurance to cover me when I need it. And that's really what it's all about. Like you pay for this service, you deserve to get your return on investment. So I'm really for making healthcare more affordable, more reliable, making sure that, we don't have just a few companies that are denying people's claims. I think we have to remember that health insurance, especially the way we're moving with AI and algorithms and whatnot, it's not fair for health insurance companies to deny your claims because at the end of the day, oftentimes it's not a doctor who's making that decision. Usually it's the doctors that are advocating for you to get that care. I'll give you a personal example. My partner, we have health insurance through our jobs. He had to go to the emergency room for an emergency room visit, and it was like a 24-hour visit. And he ended up with health insurance and having, let's say, more than 80% coverage. He got a bill for $10,000. And it has taken us over a year of trying to basically fight these claims and say, hey, this should be covered, under XYZ policies, this should be covered. And we have the time at least to do that, right? Like we're spending
Mm,
time working on these issues, but you think about, a parent who has sick children, or you think about someone who's elderly who, let's say, they have a hard time with phones, or, even the way with the apps, right? Like you have
mm,
to submit all these claims through apps or through, again, like through your computer.
mhm.
It's not easy for normal people. And I think what insurance companies are doing right now is they're trying to automate away the customer experience so that you never really talk to someone. And when you do talk to someone, they're not empowered to help you.
How would you describe why Anna Lee? Why Anna Williams versus, your competition?
Listen, I think we're in a crazy political moment right now. I think things are hyper polarized and we really need people to come together and say, how do we move forward in the society? Right? People are struggling with their healthcare, they're struggling with housing, you know, education as well. Like these are all issues we're seeing. We're seeing kind of the advancement of AI, and it's moving so fast that we're also starting to see companies lay people off because of the influence of AI. And I don't believe that the representatives of today, the Congress of today, is prepared to really take on those issues, right? I think part of the reason we're in this situation is because of, let's say, more lax policies for the past 20, 30 years that have helped allowed us to get here.
And your background and experience is in the nonprofit arena and then also in the private sector.
So I've spent the last 10 years working really with different communities. So I have this background in community organizing. I've worked with a series of nonprofit organizations like Make the Road New Jersey, which is an immigration advocacy nonprofit. I've worked with Vietnamese boat people, which again, another both advocacy, but more like community outreach. My own background, I'm half Vietnamese and Italian. So just sharing that. So it's a lot of good food, I will say.
Indeed.
Uh, but then, also working with my local food bank in New Jersey. So our interfaith food pantry of Morris County. So that's like some of the nonprofits that I've worked with. And then kind of on the private sector side, I've worked in the corporate social responsibility space. Right now I'm at a music company. So what I do with that organization is basically manage the like corporate volunteerism and giving all across the board, looking at philanthropy, thinking about again, it's the question of how do we move forward, right? We have all of these different causes. We want to support women in music. We want to just make sure people, like students, have access to musical instruments. There's a lot of studies that show that, if you play an instrument in school growing up, your chances to graduate, you have higher literacy, you have like it just is better, right? So I've been looking at programs of how to help people, how to bring them together. And really, that's been my whole job for the last 10 years is looking at different problems in communities and thinking about how can I use my skills of bringing people together to put forward solutions and just try to make things better.
Do you have a primary between now and the general election?
Yes, so what's happening right now is we have a governor's race coming up in the great state of New Jersey, and my congresswoman, Mikey Sherrill, is running for governor. So she is the Democratic nominee for the governor's race. And that election will be November 4th, I believe, this November 4th. If and when she wins, hopefully, then there will be an open race for her seat. The special election.
Would that be this year or next year?
That would be next year. So
Okay.
basically, if Mikey Sherrill wins, then uh, either Governor Murphy or when she takes office, Mikey Sherrill could call for a special election, and that means they have to give you 90 days. So it's a 90-day cycle of notice. So there's a chance that the special election primary could be
Ah,
in March or April.
okay.
But if we don't have that process, then it'll be as typically scheduled, which is June 2026.
Tell me, what area of New Jersey, what towns, counties does the 11th district comprise? I know because I looked it up, but I want people to learn it from you.
New Jersey 11 consists of Morris County, parts of Passaic County, and then parts of Essex County. Overall, a really lovely area. We have a mix of both cities. You've got like almost like farmland, country land, and also a lot of suburbs.
Yes, I was glad to see that my good old Montclair is in your district, part of Montclair and all of Upper Montclair, which is where I went to school, Montclair State.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, a million years ago. Before we talk about the issues I wrote you about, is there anything top of mind to conclude or emphasize about what you've already shared about why you're running and what you'd like to do?
I think the only thing I just want people to understand is that you deserve so much, right? Like you deserve better than what you're getting in this current moment. And I hope to be that candidate for you, but I also hope that people across the country hear this message and decide to run themselves. And I hope you look at the political system as it is and see, hey, you know what? I've been doing everything I can, and I know things have been getting harder. So, I know you deserve a fair deal. So I hope we all kind of move forward with that mentality.
When and how did you make the decision to run for Congress?
Well, I will tell you. So I went to Rutgers University for college. My background is, again, that's where I started my activism, my advocacy, all that stuff when I was in college. And I always told myself that if I were to run for office, I would do it much later. I thought, okay, I will do it when I've passed a series of thresholds. So maybe when I retire and when I've had kids and XYZ, right? And after the past presidential election, I sat with myself and said, okay, I think that a lot of people are going to be hurt by these incoming policies. So what can I do as an individual person? Like, how could I make change? And I studied political science, I studied anthropology. I'm really interested in how people are, how they think, how power and politics governs our society, right, as it is. And I was really thinking like we don't have time to waste. Like we need leadership. We need people to run, 20 years ago. And we need political involvement and kind of this sense of excitement to move forward, right? And I'm individually, like, I'm frustrated with where the Democratic Party is right now. Like, I want to see them actively listening. I want to see them proposing bold things and saying, hey, we might not have all the solutions, but we're going to try. And I think that's something that really neither party is offering at this moment.
The major issues listed in your fair deal mention some sources of funding on how new solutions could be funded. And I didn't see a lot about foreign policy, and I didn't see much or anything about the military, and that's fine because at the district level, you're emphasizing things that really speak to the heart. And I really encourage people to go to your site again, annaleewilliams.com. Our military, in my opinion, is unnecessary to the extent of probably two-thirds of it. I really think it serves egregiously horrible financial elites to the extent of dominating the world unnecessarily. Ever since World War II, we never contracted. So the funds that would be available if the
Yeah.
military were pared down to a purely logically sensible, rational, sane level for defense. Is that part of your thinking, or what do I'm sure you've thought about that. Tell me your thoughts about that stuff.
Yeah, I think this is a really important question. Right now, I think the policies we're proposing are very economic focused, right? Thinking about like how do we speak to the concerns that people have been sharing, right? Which is like, how can I afford to stay here, to grow here, to retire here?
Yeah.
And so those have been the major focus, but kind of in tandem to that, I'm a big fan of closing corporate loopholes, right? I'm a big fan of looking at, people that are ultra wealthy, and I mean like millions upon millions, even billions of dollars every year, and seeing what are they paying in taxes, right? Because I think it's incredibly important, right? Like we all live in this society, we should all have to pay our fair share, right? So looking at that, I think that programs like Doge could have worked if they didn't cut all of our services. So if Doge took a real earnest look at the military budget and how it's used, I think that could have been incredibly meaningful. Um, Again, I'm not one to try to give misinformation, but I have seen reports of things like, I don't know, like a toilet or like just random like let's say necessary supplies and appliances that are needed for military bases costing tens of thousands of dollars. And that mentality can even be applied again to our like medical insurance system, right? Where you get a Tylenol at a hospital and it's $3,000. Like there's not, you know what I'm saying? So yes, there are definitely some very clear things wrong here that we have to be pragmatic about it. Like we have to look at this and say, hey, this is not disrespectful to our veterans. This is not disrespectful to those that have served or are serving. In fact, I want to make sure that they're getting properly paid, right? I want to make sure that we're covering their health insurance and we're covering their college and we're actually supporting them because we actually have a homeless veterans problem in this country. Right. So you
Mhm.
can't tell me that we have, the highest funded military budget, but we have homeless veterans. It just doesn't actually weigh, you know?
No, right. And one really can't believe that America supports our troops or our veterans. And that's worthy of hours and hours of discussion right there. Thank you for answering that question. I want to describe those small business issues that I wanted
Yeah.
your thoughts about. Um, we're the American Small Business League, and we're focused on just a couple of things. The major thing is the federal contract dollars that are supposed to go to small businesses every year. The federal government is the largest purchaser of goods and services on the planet. In this year, projected to spend $800 billion. Okay. The law says 23% of that must go to small businesses. Inside that, 5% must go to women owned small businesses. Here's the problem. For decades, we have found and exposed the fact that most of the small business contracts go to the country's biggest businesses through fraud, loopholes, and bad policies. The SBA, Small Business Administration, which is responsible for this, says we met the 23% goal, we exceeded it, everything's fine. But what's actually happening is, as I say, those contracts are going to big businesses. And
Right.
here's the biggest problem about that, Anna, is that we are a small business nation. Many people don't know that 99.9% of all businesses in America are small businesses. By the government's definition of up to 500 employees, we think that's a bad definition because 98% have 100 employees or less.
Yeah.
By that measure, less than 5% of small businesses are getting the big business, are getting the small business contracts. And women never get the 5% of contracts that they're supposed to. So, our campaign, which is called Don't Cheat Women, and that's a site we've created, don'tcheatwomen.com, that teaches all this clearly. And we want to inspire you to consider confirming this for yourself and bring it into your campaign if appropriate. You know, there's only so much you can talk about as a candidate. I'm aware of that. But this is so where the rubber hits the road, it's unbelievable. Women are half the population, obviously, but they
Yep.
own 40% of all businesses. 14 million businesses owned by women, generating almost $3 trillion in revenue, employing over 12 million people in every field sector under the sun, selling what the government buys.
Right.
And yet, 95% of all contracts are going to companies owned by men. And if we raise from 5 to 15% the contracts that must go to women owned businesses, that pushes from 23 to 33% the contracts that would go to our small businesses, which would create 3.3 million new jobs to do the work of those contracts. But because those contracts go to big businesses, Anna, those they don't create one net new job. And this has been going on for decades. This is a scandal of epic proportions. Anyone who Googles these things right now, you will find that this is all I'm lying. That's the impression you're going to get by the search results. Except if they pull up, and AI platforms are doing this, what we've posted for 20 years that show the congressional investigations that prove this, our 100 plus freedom of information legal victories that prove this, that demonstrate this, the inspector general's own reports at the SBA proving this and validating this. So we want to create as many candidates like you running for the midterm that say, this is bipartisan. This isn't left or right. This isn't Republican or Democrat. This is simply a function of execute the law, fulfill the law, expose the
Absolutely.
corruption that is covering up the fact that billions every year are not going to our small businesses, which would balloon the mainstream middle class economies in every state. And a little bit more, and then we'll I want to hear how wherever we approach it in your reply to all of this. Women are doing well economically. They're on the rise by many other measures, and men are kind of flat, if not sliding. But now, when it comes to these federal contracts, like I say, it's less than 5% that they're getting when they ought to be getting something commensurate with their numbers and their power and their representation, just as a matter of that kind of fairness. But here's what's at stake, because women still earn and save less than men. Men have more political presence and power because they're wealthier. They donate more to politicians. They've got more influence with office holders. It's easier
Mhm.
for men to run for office. Men hold 75% of the seats in the House, the Senate, all state legislatures, and that many cabinet positions. They hold almost that many governor seats, and they hold 90% of committee chair positions and party leadership positions, dictating policy, proposing laws, and passing them. And women have different priorities, values, and issues that are underrepresented because they're just not economic equals yet. And it's 2025. That's all the wonderful things we think that could blossom and follow, boosting from 5% to 15%, the contracts that must go to women owned small businesses. And then, of course, making sure that the SBA steers those contracts to legitimate small businesses. We make it sound like, oh gosh, it would be the greatest thing since sliced bread. We think it would be. So, Anna, your thoughts about any or all of that?
Yeah, well, first, I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for reaching out to our team and just giving us the opportunity to research all of this and find out for ourselves too. I think this sent me on a journey of learning a lot more about small businesses than I knew to begin with. And I, to your point, I don't think that people realize or talk enough about how much small businesses are the backbone of this economy. Right. And I just want to share some things that I found that were really, really interesting, but also incredibly meaningful. And I think in my mind, I always felt this way, but you really see it. So I found one from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Small businesses contributed 55% of total net job creation from 2013 to 2023. Just from 2021 to 2024, they accounted for 52.8% of net job creation. And then this one was really interesting, but even the smallest businesses, so like 1 to 4 employees, boasted higher employment gains than large corporations. And I think that's really meaningful to call out in this moment because almost across the board, we're seeing economic power concentration in a series of industries. You and I are talking through Zoom right now, kind of a perfect example. But if we're thinking about all the ways you and I could communicate through Zoom, Google Hangouts, Microsoft Teams, I think there's probably 5 major players. That's just that's just one example of like the telecoms industry, right? And then you look at phones, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, but I think T-Mobile was recently bought, or I think either T-Mobile bought Sprint, something like that.
Something
So
like that.
again, consolidation. Same thing with the airlines, right? There's 4 major airlines right now. So all that to say, as these industries, these massive industries have gotten more concentrated, we're not seeing that dispersed among individuals, among like, let's say, the overall market share. So less businesses own, this market share and this increase in profit that we're seeing. All of that to say, I think it's incredibly important that we make sure that any government contracts that are awarded and that are meant for small businesses actually go to small businesses. Your team provided a lot of incredible research, and on your website and whatnot. But just to note that corporations have a strategy of creating pass-through companies and then, receiving the contract that way. And that's fraud, right? Just even looking at the data, right? Like small businesses create significantly more innovation. They help bring forward our economy, and we rely a lot more on them than the big players of the world would have you think.
Yes, and those big players for decades have captured Washington and so many of the agencies almost lock, stock, and barrel. For all that, every president and every SBA administrator regularly brags about this new initiative, that new initiative to help small businesses. The SBA is the only agency whose exclusive mission is to protect small businesses, and every
Mhm.
administration squeezes it. This one really, really
Mhm.
badly. It is cutting its budget in half, which is going to cut its staff in half. It says it can't manage $600 million in loans, but it's going to be given I think it's $1.7 trillion student loan portfolio from the Department of Education.
Great.
Now, wait a minute. We can already hear them saying, oh, that was a mistake. The SBA can't handle it. Let's push all of its functions into the Department of Commerce or the Department of Treasury. And lost in that fog of that bureaucracy, as I like to say, will be this contracting program. And also the SBA, major announcements, press releases, public events to publicize new loan programs. Look what these companies are doing with their loans. Loans. You ask people, what does the SBA do? You can get a loan. You can get a loan that's backed by the SBA. Maybe you can get some sales and marketing training. You don't hear about 23% of the federal budget is supposed to go to small businesses, and the SBA oversees that contracting program. So I really am gratified, your response to my letter and your willingness to come on this show. I wanted to get to know you. I want to help publicize this all over the place so your constituents can get to know you, check you out, vet you as their representative.
I did have a bunch of goals like to better support the SBA. And again, this is backed by the data you shared with me and also just our team taking a look and realizing, okay, there are some major problems here. The first goal and outcome that we want is to stop large-scale fraud that's affecting small business grants. The goal of that is really to protect our taxpayers from any like fake small businesses and pass-through schemes. I wanted to get your thoughts on a fraud blacklist database to prevent repeat offenders.
Yeah. Also, the pass-throughs, it's kind of hand in glove with how companies have to be certified as small businesses to apply for contracts. Great, they get a contract, but then they often don't have to recertify for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years.
That,
So
which is
very often,
insane.
right. So very often a big business will buy that small uh, business that has a federal contract for the next 7, 10 years, and the big business profits off of that small business contract. So annual recertification is an idea we're submitting for Congress or candidates to champion. That would be another way, and also just the general request or demand that the SBA proves that small business contracts are going to small businesses.
Yeah, no, and I fully agree with that. I don't think there needs to be a lot of confusion around that, right? We want to make sure that the funds that are set aside for this are actually going to help small businesses. And then I think the second piece of that, and this is our second goal, is to really level the contracting playing field. We live in this capitalist society, and I think it's incredibly important that we ensure that there's fair competition, right? And we increase legitimate small business participation within that. I would like for us to auto set aside contracts, for small businesses. Maybe it's like we auto set aside contracts of under 500K for small businesses. And then also just like thinking of ways that we can fast track certain procedures to make it easier for small businesses to get those contracts. In general, anyone that I know that has started a business has a really hard time doing it. There's not a lot of support for people. So I would almost like to see like a how to start a small business toolkit, provided and supported by the government where it says, okay, here's how you open your bank account. Here's how you file. Here's how you get your website set up. Basically all the things you need to do to help
Right.
people like have a fighting chance.
Right. And the SBA has some programs like that. One prominent one is called SCORE. But guess what?
Mhm.
Things have moved so quickly this year. I would have to search today to see, has that been slashed? Has that been targeted for elimination? On our Don't Cheat Women site, we have a page called Resources, and it basically has the basic websites and links to find out what kind of federal contracts are out there. And then also, how does one apply to get a federal contract? And there's a little bit of a warning that as you click into this and try and learn, you kind of just keep clicking into other websites and other pages. And that's part of the problem you were describing. It becomes a bit of a maze. Here's another thing. There's many agencies that the SBA and the government has allowed to be exempt from the total contracts that are considered the contracting budget. Meaning, many people add up what the federal government spends every year and says it's not 800 billion. It's
Mhm.
1.3 trillion. It's 1.5 trillion when you consider everything that the military buys and homeland security and for surveillance and for intelligence. Why are all these agencies exempt from from giving contracts to small businesses? That's a-okay by the SBA, and that's why they're able to say we gave 23% to small businesses. Well, maybe 23% of the contracts from this handful of agencies went to small business, but it's minuscule compared to all the contracts that were given for goods and services. If you take this on as a candidate and then as a representative, it'll be a massive struggle and fight to get all the interested players to comprehend and see, wow, this has been going on for decades. And who's your opponent? It's going to be the wealthiest and most powerful companies on the planet who do business primarily with the United States military, the Pentagon, who are responsible for half or more of the procurement budget.
I think you touched on something, which is we need to elect representatives that have the political will to actually take on these issues. I think a lot of these policies and really the sentiment of wanting small businesses to get their fair share falls under the fair deal.
Yeah.
Same thing with small business owners, right? Like they work hard, they show up for their families and their communities. They've done everything right and they deserve their share from the government.
There's a lot of small businesses who might have heard this whole conversation and say, I don't care about any of this. I don't make and sell what the government would buy. Wait a second. There are small businesses in your town, your county, your district that could get government contracts and create thousands of new jobs right in your area. That's going to help your bake shop or your salon or the services that you have. It would raise the whole tide for the whole economy.
The last thing I'll say too is the expectation when you're running for the House of Representatives to run a competitive campaign is to raise at least $1 million. And because this is likely going to be an open seat, I've had people in the political space tell me that we're looking at 12 to $15 million for just the primary special election. That's crazy, right? And that's ads and it's marketing and it's not actual resources that are truly going to help people and support them and really even fight for any of the causes we're talking about. But where a lot of that money comes from is super PACs and dark money that is often not traced, where as a result of Citizens United, there is no limit on the amount of money that they can accept. And what happens when there's no limit on the amount of money, right? There's going to be corruption. But that's all to say, like I've made the commitment that I'm not going to take any corporate PAC donations because again, this campaign is about the fair deal. And for me to truly fight for that, I need to make sure that I'm running an incredibly clean campaign and that I can stick to my values the whole time. And the truth is, no one that's in the political space right now is going to admit this, but money does influence how you vote. So you need to make sure that you are truly, kind of sticking to your morals as you move forward, and eventually that we have laws that kind of prevent this type of corruption.
I've been an amateur historian, particularly American history and politics and the presidents, my whole life.
Awesome.
And your greatest assets are your intelligence and your maturity, your competence, which radiates when I listen to you. So you've got to forget about sleeping for the next 6 months and do as
Thank you.
many, interviews and create as many audio and video pieces as you possibly can so people can get a sense of you to compete with candidates who might get the wealthy contributions, to be owned and captured by corporate powers. To compete, you simply have to meet every single person in your district and ask for their vote. You know that.
Yep.
That's politics 101 in America. Have you any final thoughts, questions, comments, please?
Just thank you. Thank you so much for your time, for giving me this opportunity. Anyone who's listening, please go check out our website. It's annaleewilliams.com, and you can find me on social media on all the platforms except for Twitter at Anna for America, all one word.
All right. I want to thank you, and I want to thank everybody for watching and listening today.